This is the age of dying democracies, artificial intelligence, declining intellect, and corrupt powers. The countdown is on. We are now in the 24th hour.
Welcome back to the 24th hour, and I'm Michael P. America. I'm so glad you guys are joining me today. And we're going to talk about power and poverty. I kind of call it Power and Poverty, the story of democracy and fascism, an affair of hatred. Because at the end of the day, that's what it all comes down to. So when we think of poverty, we think of, these poor people on the street. They don't have a job, the homeless. We don't think about the working poor. We don't think about the middle class who are all one check away from losing everything that they've built up. Even those who have great retirements and have built up a tremendous amount of savings, all it takes is some type of Wall Street scam, and next thing you know, they're done. Some type of crazy thing with mortgages, and all of a sudden the house that they own is no more. Or if they just look into the mortgage contracts and they want to find fraud, they can find it because the contracts are actually designed that way. Why? Because the wealthy don't believe you should have anything. Now, they're going to let you think while you're working for them and you're bringing them great wealth that you do all these things, that you're going to be okay. But that's not how it is. Now, we had a fiduciary relationship with those folks who are making the guidelines, the powers, the attorneys that are explaining things to us, the whole nine, the whole system. And we were taught that. And you actually need that for a system to work. The only problem is the actual design was always set up. So if they really want to get you, they can do it. And also, depending on which way the law of justice blows, and right now we know that it's blowing extremely south, negative, full of bias, vitriol, hatred, and it reeks of fascism. It reeks of Nazis. And that's what we're seeing. Yeah, they put on suits and they act like, yeah, I'm just like you and blah, 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 blah. But those are nothing but war uniforms. That's it. Just another type of war uniforms. There is a war that's been unleashed on the common man, and it's getting worse and worse. And you see the death of American democracy on the bottom. All right. So again, thank you for coming, and let's talk about poverty. So from what I've seen, poverty is the tool that real power uses to push the vulnerable into crime. Okay. Poverty is a device used to corrupt and to create, poverty is a device used by the corrupt to create expendability and authority over the general populace. Sorry, I got a little tongue-tied there. Many in the United States live in a state of poverty or on the brink of poverty at any given moment. Okay, for many, money represents power or lack thereof. Disenfranchisement is a word that's hardly ever spoken, but it's definitely felt. All right. Privilege may not understand that. And when it's hitting them, because they're not used to it, they can't tell what it is until they completely bottom out. Right. But here's the deal. Disenfranchisement is synonymous with poverty to the point that one is usually represented by the other. The state of capitalism exasperates disenfranchisement, which in a monetary world is actually represented by poverty. If you think about that, those who are poor don't seem to have a voice. So they need somebody to speak up for them. And it's really that somebody is about the numbers. But if we're being divided, and if we don't realize what's happening to all of us, then kind of that state of privilege or that false sense of self kicks in, and we're blind to the suffering of our brothers and sisters, or we're blind, not understanding that our brothers and sisters are suffering today, but tomorrow it will be us. So as the state of capitalism grows, democracy dies. And how do we know? Because in our current times, we see the few have more and the many have less. So digest that for a second. This is not a rhyme or a riddle. The few have more and the many have less. As American democracy slips into fascism, the cost of living gets higher and higher. Now, the destruction caused by the powerful global criminal cabal currently in power manifest in the decline of human rights, which ultimately leads to the death of humanity. So just kind of digest what I'm saying here. And you don't even have to agree with me. All you got to do is just look outside your window. Turn on the news. It's burning, even though they try to sell it with a tube of toothpaste and something that'll make your breath smell good. But it's not going to do you any good if you have nothing to eat. You might have mouthwash, maybe. In the old days, they used alcohol. They used liquor, okay, which mouthwash contains alcohol, right? Right. All right, so now this current administration, with their playbook and their policies, are in opposition to free speech, to democracy, and human rights. They are also weaponizing the government against the people and pressuring or incentivizing other governments around the world to do the same. So imagine that. They're paying other third world nations who, the United States and Western Europe probably overthrew their democracies. So now, for decades, they're living under tyranny and they have a lot of poverty. And the United States will say, hey, we can put these corporate prisons over there and we'll send you the folks that don't appreciate you and folks that don't appreciate dictators, right? That's what's happening. That's exactly what's happening. So the assault on democratic institutions is plunging our nation and the world into war, mass incarceration, and slavery in perpetuity. So imagine that, in perpetuity, right? Forever and ever and ever, as long as we exist, right? If we didn't have a police state before, we have one now with the military being used to police cities and states in violation of the United States Constitution. Yes, they are in violation of the United States Constitution. But guess what? What courts are actually holding them accountable? It takes so long, and now the states can't file together. They have to file separately. So, that's the bureaucracy of the politicians mucking it all up so that we can't maintain a democracy. So they're doing the bidding of the super wealthy, right? So think about this. If we weren't living on a prison planet before, we are living on one now with Trump's war on immigration, using mass thugs called ICE, increased funding of private prisons, and the use of private prisons around the world, along with deporting anyone who tries to hold his administration accountable for their illegal acts. And the courts signed off on it pretty much before he got in the White House, saying, well, if he's the president and he does stuff, he can't go to jail. And I'm like, he's not above the law, but you just made him a king. You just made him a tyrant. You are in collusion with whatever this is. He ain't doing it by himself. And I said, ain't, right? I know. Mrs. Butler, my English teacher, McKinstry Junior High, she's like, come on, really? Ain't? Yep, and as my sister would say, ain't that quaint? With the cost of living well exceeding wages and the increase of prisons for hire, producing more slave labor, we now see the dawn of the globalization of the plantation planet. Yes, slavery is now more than ever legal. But remember, it's not one man. Many have paved the way for the fall of American democracy. Trump was truthful about one thing. He said this. He goes out and he does his televangeling to his MAGA disciples. The one thing that he said, we are in a war. And then I would add, not just here in America, but the war has been engineered against the entire world. Oh yeah, it's not just us. But if we fall, it's all gone for the world. The world right now is watching us, and whatever we do, very important. If you save American democracy, you will save the world. You can trust me on that one. I'm like I said, all right, I want you to hear something about racism. And the reason is that a lot of this that's going on has a lot to do with racism, but it also has to do with the fact that 8 billion people, they don't want 8 billion people to have rights. And so their thing is to keep you divided, keep you fighting while they grift, while they steal, while they tell you every day there's no climate change, but they're destroying the atmosphere. They're planning, dictators. Well, they've done that all over the world. Then they blame these countries like, see, they are dictators. They're bad. But meanwhile, we got a guy who wants to be a dictator, doesn't want to be questioned, and they are giving it to him. Not for him, because even to them, he's expendable, but these guys never understand that. They never survive, ever. They never, ever, ever survive. But the issue is the damage and the carnage that they actually reap upon our United States Constitution, our sovereignty, and our rights, our inalienable rights, as laid out in the Constitution. The damage will be severe, and we do not come back from this when you will have so many powerful, wealthy, corporate states, because that's what it's going to be. They're trying to cut this all up. They're going to divide America up, and then they're going to squeeze you in. They're going to enslave you, and then they're going to get rid of who they don't want, and they're going to keep dumbing you down as they make the machines even smarter. But, we know that that's not going to play out well right now. So let's take a look at what someone has to say about racism.
Most white people don't see racism. I know that it seems unbelievable because the signs are there if you look for them, but we don't see racism because we're spoiled. That's right, I said it. Here's how I personally illustrate this as an analogy from my personal experience. I have had problems with my feet all my life, and if I am having foot pain, all I can think about is how much my feet hurt. But when I found a style of shoes that were right for me, I realized I hardly ever think about my feet anymore because they don't bother me now. If something is causing you pain, you think about it. You think about how to make it stop. Or you give up thinking about it ever stopping and you think about how to endure it, how to live with it, how to fight it, how to minimize it. And that applies whether it's foot pain or racism. Most white people very rarely have to think about race unless we make a decision to think about it. And that's a choice for us. It's optional. It's not something we're forced to confront every day. As white parents, we tell our kids, if you get into trouble, find a police officer. They'll help you. Black parents would never do that. People of color give the talk about how to minimize the risk of getting killed by cops. If something doesn't hurt you, you don't learn to watch out for it. That is why white people don't get it when it comes to race. We walk through the world thinking our experience is the norm. So when black people describe being followed, being profiled, denied, or dismissed, it doesn't line up with what we have experienced. So we assume that black people are exaggerating, or too often we assume that it means that it's just not really happening. But the truth is, and I'm talking to white people here, racism isn't always blatant. It's not always a burning cross or a lynching. Sometimes it's a policy or a pattern that benefits us and makes us comfortable, so comfortable that we don't even notice. When it doesn't block your path, when it doesn't cause you any pain, you might not even notice that it exists. That's what white privilege is. Not just what you get, but what you never have to see. If my videos help you see something more clearly, please share. One share shows you care about setting the record straight. And if you want to help me keep making this kind of content, you can leave a tip at coffee.com/Kelly Snyder.
Wow. I think that's pretty powerful, but I think it's really a great explanation. And I wish more people were doing that. This is real. So this lady, she did this herself. And this is floating around on social media. And let's take a look at some of the other things that are floating around on social media right now. Wow. The history of Nazis holding rallies in left-wing areas, right? Trump destroying Black history. Can you imagine that? Right? But we're seeing that. Okay. So the MAGA voters are stating that we didn't vote for this. Oh, and here we are. It's called the Department of War. And where's my Nobel Peace Prize? Yeah, that dude's crazy. Who's going to give you a Nobel for Department of War? Miss Jane Fonda is telling you to stand up, and she's worried about what she sees, and she's seen a lot. So, and here we are, mass, ice, Hawk helicopters all in Chicago tearing up stuff. And of course, the president who's shutting down everything, but trying to blame everybody else. His party is in control. So that's the stuff that's floating around on social media. We do have a lot of patriots out there, real patriots, okay? I'm not talking about the MAGA guys who, want the Nazi world, the Confederate Army, or the clueless white Christian nationalists who are trying to, make Jesus look like Hitler, or whatever kind of garbage they got going on. We're talking about real people who really want to save democracy. So I'm Michael Pugh America, and the one thing I got to tell you is that you got to keep fighting for your democracy. We are definitely in the 24th hour. Thanks for watching, and I will be back real soon.
The 24th hour.